I'm Dr. Lisa Palmer, Dr. Mama Bear, coming to you live from Central Florida. Missed you guys last week. We were in Puerto Rico. So you guys can let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you are on, if my mic is working. That would be awesome. And so we went to La Isla Encanta. We went to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. And so we decided last minute to go. Luckily, there is no mask mandates. There is no social distancing. There is no vaccine cards. There is no testing. So that is why we went to Puerto Rico. We haven't been anywhere in years because of all this nonsense, and needed a much needed vacation. And one of our staff is from Puerto Rico, and she's always told us how beautiful the island is. And of course, I love Puerto Rican food. And we decided to go. And so we did. Hi, Alyssa. Hi, Gogo. Hi, Emily. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for letting me know that you guys are there. Hi, Alice from Northern Colorado. So we went to Puerto Rico. We were there a week. It's about a 2-hour flight from Florida. Hi, Lisa. Don't worry, Lisa, you can catch the Quantum Nutrition Academy Q&A. I'll get it posted as soon as I can in the Academy. Hi, Teresa. And so Puerto Rico is a beautiful island. I mean, I love photography. My father loves photography and, taught me about photography, and everywhere I looked was beautiful photography. The sky and the ocean, the dark blues of the ocean and the light blues of the ocean, and the palm trees and the tropical plants and the tropical flowers and the coastline and the rain. It's the only place in the US that has a rainforest. It's in Puerto Rico. And the rainforest and the food, and I'm a foodie, and fresh seafood just caught that day off the boat, prepared for you. Amazing, right? Amazing. So all the positive, awesome things in Puerto Rico. Got some vitamin D, got some vitamin C, C as in SEA, being in the ocean. Puerto Rico has both the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Ocean. I didn't know that. And so just a beautiful, beautiful place. Hi, Robin. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Lisa. Hey, Gina. Gina might be going to Greece, and Greece is beautiful. Talk about beautiful islands and in a beautiful Mediterranean Ocean. So just a great place, fast trip from Florida, dropped everything, no masks, no vaccine cards, no testing, none of that. But the part that was hard, and so, I try to disconnect and spend time with family and relax my brain and decompress. And, there was walks on the beaches and digging my toes in the sand and all that. But I don't do nothing well. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. I know a lot of you guys are on with me right now, are type A and driven and get things done. And so I don't disconnect well. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing. I think it's a good thing because I'm productive. So I was reading like business books and different books that apply to what I do, which is cool, which helps everyone. I spent some time playing with my daughter in the pool and making sandcastles and going on adventures. We went horseback riding, which was cool. We trail rode the foothills of the rainforest of El Yunque, which is the only rainforest in the United States, and Puerto Rico is U.S. territory. We went on a bioluminescent kayak tour, which was really hard, by the way. Like, to kayak 3 miles was very, very challenging. And I needed help. One of the tour guides had to tow me, which is very embarrassing to tell you, because I was a college athlete and a professional athlete, and I actually rode Division I for the University of Florida. I rode crew for UF, for their club team. And I thought, the kayaks are 2 people kayaks. So you guys can let me know if you guys kayak. And they're 2 people kayaks. And so if you have an odd number, so it was just myself, Dr. Dean, and Leah, there was 3 of us. So if they're 2 people kayaks and you have an odd number party like we did, we had 3, then you get placed with another person. So I was like, okay, well, I can row with Leah, which basically means I'm just going to row both of us, or I can get in a kayak with a random person, because we can't leave Leah by herself, right? So it couldn't be Jason and I and Leah because there's only 2 people. And so what would you guys do? So would you take the chance of being with a random person, or would you row with your kid, right? And then Jason, I'm like, okay, well, Jason's a big boy. He can be with somebody else, or he can be by himself. So I thought I played it smart. And when you first, so it's a nighttime tour, because the bioluminescent is organisms in the ocean that give off bioluminescence, just like fireflies, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of other things that glow, but fireflies come to mind. Oh, the fish, like in Finding Nemo, the fish with the glowy things, bioluminescence, that's how it glows. And so you have to row through or kayak through like waves. So like think about beach waves coming in, beach waves to mangroves, and then you go for a pretty good distance. So it was 1.5 miles out to this lagoon. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I rode in college, like it's kayaking, come on. And I got Leah with me. She weighs like 60 pounds, like no big deal, right? So I'm kayaking and we're going through the ocean, and you're supposed to stay with the boat in front of you. And you have like little glow bracelets on the front and on the back, because you don't want to have too much light, because you wouldn't be able to see the bioluminescence when you get to the lagoon. So I'm like, all right, no big deal. So I'm paddling, no big deal. And then I'm trying to get my groove, and I'm like, okay, well, do I have to put the oar in like in crew? Because in crew, you have shoes that are mounted in the boat, and you walk your boat out in socks, and then you tie your feet in the shoes that are mounted. And then you're on a slide, right? In crew, you're on the slide, and you slide forward, and the oar is close to your chest. And then you push back. You guys can let me know if you rode crew. And you push back with your legs, which is like doing a squat, like pushing out from a leg press. And then the last part is you bring it up to your chest, and then you put the oar in, and then you push back with your legs, and so on. And so that's crew, and crew is no joke. Crew is a hard workout. So I'm like, I rode crew, kayaking, easy peasy, no big deal, right? So Gina said she'd rather go with a stranger than alone. I agree. Leah was with me, but Leah's only 8, so she wasn't really able to kayak. Like the paddle's pretty long, right? I don't know how long it is, but it's decent length. So I'm thinking, no big deal. I could do this. So you have to paddle against the waves so the kayaks are this way and the waves are coming in this way, and they're kind of hitting the side of the kayak, right? And I'm like, all right, I got this. So I'm going and I'm trying to get my rhythm. And those of you that are kayak know, like, you got to get a rhythm. And I'm trying to pull like I did in crew, but it doesn't have a slide on it. And I'm like falling out at the seats, and I'm like just like an awkward kayaker, right? And then the next thing I know, my arms are starting, because crew, again, is like 80% legs, because you're pushing off. Kayaking isn't. Kayaking is when you put in, you pull, it's biceps. And if you push, it's your triceps. And when you're pushing like this, it's your chest muscles. So these are muscles I used to work out a lot. But since the pandemic, I haven't gone to the gym because of they required masks, right? So I'm starting to struggle, and I'm not keeping up with the boat in front of me. And the guys are talking in Spanish, and I know Spanish, and I can hear them say, hey, there's a mom with her kid and she's struggling. And I'm like, and my athlete pride, like my ego is like totally like, I feel deflated, right? I feel like a dork. I feel like an old mom, right? And so the next thing I know is this little guy, he's probably like my height and maybe weighs 10 more pounds than me, takes the boat, he hooks my kayak to his kayak, and now he's pulling both my kayak and his kayak. And he doesn't tell me anything. He just kind of takes me, and he's going fast, and he brings me all the way to the front of the line. And I have fallen back like, I don't know, there's probably like 20 kayaks with us, and I probably fell from like kayak position number 2 or 3 to kayak position like 16. So he's kayaking and he's pulling, and you can like feel like the pull. He's so strong. And I'm just sitting there like, what do? I feel like a dork. I feel like a loser. Like you start getting all that negative talk, right? So he like kicks butt, and he's like now passing people, and he's like passing my husband. I'm like, hi. And he's passing people. And I like, everybody knows like I'm like the mom that couldn't keep up. And now I'm getting towed in by this other kayak. And then I feel kind of deflated. But then I also remember that when I was a kid, we would go fishing down in the Everglades in South Florida. And oftentimes we were fishing and we see kayakers. And so what people don't realize when you're kayaking is when you're going with the current, right? The current's pushing you. It's very easy, and so people would go down the Everglades and they're just kind of kayaking through the rivers and through the waterways and through the bays and stuff like that. And no big deal because the current was going. Well, to get back to where they came from, now they have to go against the current, and it's very challenging, especially if you're not used to kayaking. And so my father oftentimes would tow in kayakers that kind of got stuck in the middle of nowhere Everglades, because if you're out there, you don't have any way of coming back. And I remember one instance, we were in the middle of fishing, and this guy came up to us and he's like, hey, my dad is really tired and he's having trouble and he's getting chest pains and I'm afraid he's going to have a heart attack. Will you tow us in? And so my dad, looking back, he had a stressful hospital job, and fishing for him was a way that he would relax. So you guys can let me know if you guys like fishing for relaxation. And so he would use it to relax and family time, right? And so we're in the middle of like catching stuff, and this guy asks, hey, can you tow my dad in? And as a kid, I remember thinking like, I don't want to tow this guy in. Like he should just kayak back because I don't have any understanding of what it is. And so my dad's like, all right, well, we're going to help them because that's what you do, especially when it comes to nautical things or marine things. If you don't help that person, they could have been stuck in the Everglades for days. They could have died. The guy could have had a full-blown heart attack. It could have been really bad. So my dad, being a kind soul, we all stopped fishing. We ended our fishing trip early and threw out a tow line and towed back not only the dad, but the son. And I'm thinking, who is this Joe Schmo stuck behind our boat getting towed in? And when you tow in a kayak, you can't go normal boat speed, right? So we're going like 5 miles an hour. Otherwise, we're going to capsize this kayak. And so I remember as a kid that my father had done that multiple times. And I'm like, why does my dad keep towing these kayak people? Like they should just row in. And so as I'm getting towed myself from this guy who's extremely strong on his own kayak, I think about that and I'm like, wow, karma, right? So my dad totally could have left those guys in the Everglades, and my dad totally could have just said, hey, I'm fishing, like go away, I'm with my kid. Or my dad totally could have just blown off the situation. But I believe in good deeds, and I believe in karma. And I think and this guy could have just let me and Leah struggle, right? And fall to the back of the pack. And then maybe could have said, hey, sorry, you're not strong enough. You can't come with us. But instead, he towed us to the front of the line in front of 15, 20 other boats. And then they didn't just say, okay, you paddle now. He towed us to the front tour guide, and the tour guide said, look, we noticed that you were having difficulty in the ocean. He didn't say you sucked. He didn't say you're weak. He didn't say any of that stuff, because he could have said, look, lady, you sucked. He said, hey, we noticed that you're having difficulty, so we're going to go ahead and just tow you. And if you want to help paddle, come in rhythm with me and I'll paddle. So, I rested a little bit and I helped him paddle, and he was super cool. And he's studying, really interesting, he's studying psychology. And he's told me he's seen it all. He's seen people like deathly afraid of the dark. And so this is a nighttime thing. You're going at dark. Can you imagine someone panicking at the dark? He said he's had people do the kayak tour that were afraid of the ocean, of seagrass, of mangroves. Mangroves are the trees that grow in the bay, right? Scared of water, scared of all these different things. So I just really appreciated this guy who made a trip that could have been really stinky, really fun. And then when we got to the lagoon, you can't, it's not like an Avatar thing where it's starting to glow. You have to put your hand in the lagoon and like kind of make the water move. and you can see the bioluminescent creatures. You can see it looks like a blue streaky type of I don't know, organisms. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like really, really cool. You put your hand in and then you shake the water around and it stirs them up and they secrete their bioluminescent light and you see it. And because it was coming up to a full moon, we actually had to put tarps over our kayaks so it was dark enough to see it. And it was just very magical and very cool. So those are all like the positive, cool parts of our trip. Amazing food, beautiful island, cool adventures. Made me realize that I need to do more chest and arm workout. And but the hard part was that in Puerto Rico, when you go to restaurants, in the front of the restaurant, it says social distance, wear a mask, and show your vaccine card. And so during this pandemic, that's what the people of Puerto Rico went through. And I could see how it would be very, very hard not having a vaccine card. And I can see how people that didn't understand the negative effects of the shots, how they would go ahead and do it because their life was so compromised without it. And so the practitioner in me, the doctor in me, it was very hard to see these happy island people still living in fear. So, you know, we didn't wear masks. We don't wear masks in Florida. We don't wear masks in Puerto Rico. It wasn't enforced anymore. So we definitely weren't going to do that there. And seeing the Puerto Rican people still wearing masks, not everybody, but them wearing masks. And then we went to a grocery store, which was really interesting because in this Puerto Rican grocery store, there was a whole aisle for chicken feed. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And there was some exotic fruits and vegetables. There was a whole display of like turmeric, which I was like, wow, I didn't realize that Puerto Ricans eat so much turmeric. You know, turmeric is naturally anti-inflammatory. So that was cool. But there was a lot of people in the grocery store wearing masks still. And, you know, whereas I would just say hi or smile, you know, they were like coming out of the aisle and going the opposite direction or pulling their cart to the side to try to get away from us. And I think it was because one, we're tourists, and two, we weren't wearing masks. And so it saddened me to see the fear that's there. And it saddened me to see how restaurants were demanding for vaccine cards during the pandemic. Now that's all gone, but the damage is there. And then flying, so it was the first time we had flown in 2 years. And usually, you know, like we flew Southwest, so they have like Group A and Group B and Group C and all that stuff, right? And it was sad to see between group, I think before Group A, because we were Group A, before Group A, they let everybody in wheelchairs board the plane. And on the way to Puerto Rico, there were so many people in wheelchairs that by the time Group A, which was the first group after I think Preferred, went, half the plane was already filled with wheelchair people. And so, you know, I don't know if you guys do this, but when someone's in a wheelchair, I always wonder, like, what happened? Like, did they hurt their ankle? Did they hurt their knee? Are they disabled? Can they walk? Like, what's happening? So I think it's like a practitioner or a doctor thing or a curious thing. And so, unfortunately, a lot of the people I saw in wheelchairs were extremely obese. And it saddened me. And I realized that, you know, diabetes, unhealthy people, Heather says, diabetes is going up. People's chronic diseases are going up because of the pandemic. Anxiety and depression has gone up. Addiction has gone up. Abuse of pain medications has gone up. And so that was hard to see. And then being in Puerto Rico, same thing. A lot of people that are sick, a lot of people that are got chronic disease. And so I go on vacation to try to decompress and de-stress, and then realizing you can't get away, and maybe this is real to you guys, you can't get away from reality, right? Like, you can relax and you could be on a beach, you could be a tropical paradise, but reality is reality. And so if anything, it helped to refuel my purpose in teaching quantum nutrition testing to other practitioners and helping more patients. So that was cool. So I was very excited to come home. But also, you know, while I was gone, I will admit to you that I tried some Puerto Rican food that I've never had. One of my associates, Sohaila, is from Venezuela, and they have a food called arepas. And I wish she was on here with me so she could describe what a arepa is. So you guys can describe that if you want. But arepa, I believe, is made out of cheese and it's fried. And it can contain things inside it. And so in Puerto Rico, they have the arepas de coco. So it's kind of like I don't know, in English, maybe like a turnover, but it was made out of coconut flour and coconut. And so I was like, you know what? I don't know when I'm coming back to Puerto Rico, if ever. And I've never had an arepa. And so when I look at health, I look at eating as best I can whenever I can. But I also don't look at like never eat anything that may not be exactly in your food, right? Like I look at trying things too. So I tried a arepa. It was good. It was hot. It was fried. It was tasty. But I definitely paid the price for eating that arepa. And what that meant, or what that means, is that the closer we get to a full moon, and Sunday was a full moon, a blood moon, and a lunar eclipse. So some of you guys might have felt more irritable. Some of you guys might have felt more emotional, more sad. Some of you guys might have felt more angry. So you guys can let me know if you felt any of that. I definitely felt more emotional. I was telling Marilee, there was a little, like it looked like somebody's grandpa on the way in the TSA line back to the United States. And he was flying by himself. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know. I just, you kind of look at someone, you kind of get data. I'm like, I don't know. I think his wife passed and he's all by himself. And it looks like he's flying to the US to go see his family. And he's just like this sweet little man. And so I smiled at him. And he was wearing a mask, but I could tell that he smiled back, because you can tell in the eyes. And then I started walking forward and I'm like tearing up and I'm like, what's wrong with me? And I realized between the full moon and all that other stuff that emotions got. So Monique's saying lots of energy, felt wired. Alyssa says, yep, she felt the moon. So I ate the arepa, and that night I felt horrible. I was nauseous. I was bloated, which is bloated and nauseous is not good on vacation. And bloating and nauseous is definitely not good when you have to get in a bathing suit. And so the cool thing with quantum testing is I could get tested and figure out why. And so I needed more of a supplement called Pair 4, and I ate about half a bottle, like just straight up ate them, and it turned off the nausea. And then I took Pair 3 and I rubbed it into my tummy, probably like 7 droppers in my tummy, and it totally turned off the nausea, didn't have any vomiting, and I was okay. And so if you are feeling anxious, if you are feeling you want cookies, candies, ice cream, alcohol, if you want to eat a whole bunch of carbs, if you're feeling irritable, if you are grinding your teeth, if you can't sleep, if you're bloated, if you have diarrhea, it may be parasites. And so around full moons, parasites get more active. And actually, a new patient today taught me that females, you should have your period around a full moon. Wait, you should ovulate. Now I forget. She either said you have to ovulate, you should ovulate on a full moon and have your period on a new moon, or vice versa. So you guys can let me know if you've ever heard that. I've never heard that, but it does make sense. And so when it comes to parasites are such a big problem, and they are everywhere. They are in Puerto Rico, they're in Florida, they're in Nebraska, they're in Colorado, they're in Maine, they're in New York, they're everywhere. And so I think a lot of healthcare providers think like parasites only exist in islands and in Mexico and maybe India, or in Africa, but that's not true. They're everywhere. So I want to encourage you that if you need help with parasites, I'm happy to help you through quantum nutrition testing to see if parasites or any immune challenges could be negatively affecting you. Sometimes stool tests miss parasites. Oftentimes stool tests miss parasites. Oftentimes imaging miss parasites. Or in imaging, someone might have a lesion or a cyst or a fibroid, and the physician doesn't know quite why that occurred. Then they want to cut it open or cut it out. If you cut it open and it's filled with parasites, what happened? You just release parasites everywhere. So with parasites and with this trip, definitely see that my purpose is very strong and very needed. And those of you that want to be on the team, we need more help. So please reach out. We were at the hotel and there was a family that was with us. There was a family that was in the pool, and my daughter is like a little fish. She can swim every day. And there's a family with us. And, as a physician, you observe things. Just like if you guys are in teaching and you see, you can tell like a kid's reading and something's not quite right, or you can, you're in a different profession, or those of you that are in construction, you can be like, yeah, that building was built great, or that building was built not great, or the foundation's not stable, or, you use the skills of your profession, right? And so it's very hard to turn, whether I'm on vacation or not, it's very hard to turn that off. And so we're in the pool, and we both were playing with Leah, my husband and I, and then we would take turns. And so I was like, honey, I really, really, really want to read this book. I really like it. Can you play with Leah in the pool a little bit so I can just lay here and read? And he's like, sure. So I'm reading, and then I'm looking and watching them play in the pool, and this other family is nearby. And, my husband, like their ball, like it's near us in the pool or near them in the pool. And my husband gives it back to them. And the dad's talking to Jason a little bit, and the mom's talking to Jason a little bit, and seeing the kids interact. And I'm noticing that the daughter's not saying anything. She just kind of makes noises and kind of screams, but doesn't use words. So I thought, well, that's kind of weird, but I'm reading a book, and, they're not my patients, and, you kind of dismiss it, right? So then they're playing more, and I'm like, now I'm trying not to pay attention, but I'm paying attention, and I'm trying not to observe because I'm supposed to be on vacation, but I'm paying attention. I'm like, the girl's eyes are cross-eyed. And I'm like, she's neurologically damaged. What would damage a girl's brain? And what would damage a girl's nervous system? And so some of you guys know, and some of you guys already answered, right? Like, it can be heavy metal toxicity. Well, it could be a birth injury. Well, how would that happen, right? Like, what do most kids get in the US? They get vaccinated on the day they are born. And so sometimes it's birth injury. Sometimes it's birth injury via vaccination. Could be something else, but I'm noticing the eyes are crossed. She's not talking. She's 3. She should be able to say words, but none of the words make sense. They're all and screaming and that kind of thing. So then I'm watching, but I'm trying not to watch because, again, I'm on vacation, and they end up sitting next to us at like several meals because there was not a lot of restaurants on property. So we would eat lunch sometimes at this restaurant. So they're sitting next to us at breakfast. They're sitting next to us at lunch. And you get that tugging on your heart, like you should say something. And so I told my husband, I'm like, we should say something to them. But what do you say? Like, you just go up to the parents and be like, hey, we noticed your kid doesn't talk and their eyes are crossed. They need chiropractic. They need nutrition. And we need to detox the metals. Like, you can't say that. Like, that doesn't go over well. Now, if someone comes into my office and they come into my world and they want my help, I can say stuff like that, right? But when you're on vacation and you just have a family that's near you, you can't say it like that, right? So I'm like, Jason, we have to say something. And he ended up talking to them more because it seemed like he was always sitting closer to their table. And I said, we have to tell the mom something. We have to say something. I don't know how we're going to say it. I don't know if they're going to appreciate what we're saying. I don't know if they're going to get pissed off at us. But I feel like in my soul that we have to say something. Like, we have to tell them something. And he's like, well, what am I supposed to say? I'm like, I don't know, but we have to say something. And I go, and it was interesting because everywhere we turned around, we kept running into this family. And this resort that we were at was like 100 and something acres. Like, it wasn't like a tiny little place, but we kept like running into them in the pool. And we would go to the pool at random times, and we would keep running into them at lunch, and we go to lunch at random times, and we'd run into them at breakfast, and we go to breakfast at random times. So like, it was like, we kept circling back. And so the dad ended up taking the son, I think, back to their room, and the mom was there. And I'm like, Jay, like, you have to say something. Like, you're next to her and you've been the one talking to them. Like, you have to say something. He's like, well, what do I say? I'm like, I don't know. Like, say something. Like, we have to help this kid. So the dad earlier had told Jason that the little girl had canker sores in her mouth, and the canker sores, don't worry that she's going to get surgery on her canker sores. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, surgery on her canker sores. Like, that's not going to be good. And so the mom went on to tell him that she had a tongue tie. And so her tongue wasn't moving enough. And then they thought that's why she couldn't speak. And I'm like, yeah, that's part of what's happening. But I also think that she is on the spectrum because the eyes are not right. Right. So I said, you have to say something. So either say, try chiropractic because sometimes the eyes can balance with chiropractic because your brainstem goes through your upper part of your neck, your cervical spine. And if the cervical spine's out of alignment from birthing, whether it's vaginal or a C-section or learning how to crawl or learning how to walk, or your mama dropped you or whatever, stress on the upper cervical spine can cause changes in vision. And so one of the things you can see is you can see someone with a big eye and someone with a smaller eye. And that could be misalignment in the neck, or eyes that go cross or one goes out. That also could be a problem in the neck. And so I've had friends when I was in elementary school where one eye went to the wall, they call it wall eye, and they cut the kid's eye muscle and patched the kid's eye. I'm like, oh my gosh. When I went to chiropractic school, I'm like, oh my gosh, Betty Sue could have just got a chiropractic adjustment instead of getting her eye muscle cut. That's crazy. So I'm like, we have to say something. So Jason starts to talk to the mom and he's like, look, I noticed that your daughter, I don't remember all the things he said, but basically he said, pediatric chiropractic may help your daughter. And if you want, we can look for somebody in your area. And he got her information and all that stuff. And so, you never know what you say or do and how you do it. I always feel like, and I tell our other associates and practitioners that we train, if you communicate from a place of love, if you can communicate from a place of caring, if you communicate from a place of concern, then oftentimes the communication, no matter what you say, will come out exactly right at the exact right moment, at the exact right time, to the exact right person. So, Heather said it happened for a reason. Yeah, it totally happened for a reason. It totally happened that we kept running into them. It totally happened because this whole resort, and why Leah wanted to play in this part of the pool had like five pieces. Like there's different entry points. So why Leah wanted to go around the back of the pool to this part of the pool and swim there where she could have swum anywhere, or a different pool, is interesting. Why we kept seeing them at breakfast is interesting. Why we saw them at lunch is interesting. And then why the dad took the son to the room and had the mom there and she was willing to talk to us, was very interesting. So hopefully that one conversation that, believe me, I didn't want to have it. Jason didn't want to have it, but we felt absolutely that we needed to have it, was the exact right thing. And hopefully this little girl gets help. And so whatever your profession is, whatever your training is, whatever your education is, if you're on this channel right now, listening to me live or, listening to me later, please, 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 there may be this conversation on your heart that keeps coming up and you don't want to have it because you don't want to offend someone, or you don't want to tell the coworker, or you don't want to tell the whoever. If you don't have that conversation, maybe the choices that they make will lead them in the wrong direction. Maybe the choices that you didn't have that conversation, maybe you were supposed to be the one to give them that additional data and would have saved their life, or would have improved their life, or would have changed the course of their life. So I just want to give you guys that message. I just want to encourage you to speak your purpose, to have those tough conversations, and especially if you feel that tug on your heart, to say what you need to say. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I'm Dr. Lisa Palmer, Dr. Mama Bear. Good night.